Here are the top 10 people I see taking over for Alex Kurtzman as the Star Trek franchise runner. Hi, I'm Jordan the Nerd of Gold, and I've divided this into 7 insiders who are likely to be taking his place and 3 outsiders who can take his place, because we know that Alex Kurtzman, who has been acting as like the franchise runner for all the different shows that have been coming out for the last almost 10 years or so, and he's going to be stepping down basically unless his contract gets extended. We don't know that it's going to happen, so right now I'm thinking about who are the people that can replace him, who has good relationships, who does Paramount think has the juice to take over for Alex Kurtzman and run the franchise as a whole, and maybe lead us to a whole new era of shows. So with that being said, I'm going to go 1 through 7, and then my 3 outsiders on that front. So number 1, I think Terry Matalas is probably the most likely person based on how well his season of Star Trek Picard was received and just how well the fans liked him. I think Paramount recognizes that and they see that he has a lot of juice, so I think he's probably the most likely. After that, I think it's Vika Goldsman and / Ginny Lumet. I think I'm saying that right, but they have worked outside of Matalas the most on these Kurtzman era shows, and I think that Akiva has the most experience on that front with working on movies and television shows. So I think it's pretty likely that he and Ginny will take over as a franchise runner if they don't go with Matalas. After that, I think it's going to be Michelle Paradise, who worked on Star Trek Discovery seasons 3 through 5 as the showrunner. So yeah, she seems pretty likely from my point of view. She's also worked on Star Trek Strange New Worlds and Picard as well. So yeah, seems like she's got a lot of experience on that front. Next, on the live action front, we've got Noga Landau, if I'm saying that correctly. She's relatively new. She's worked on some of the other Star Trek shows, but she's only been the showrunner on Star Trek Starfleet Academy, both seasons 1 and 2. And we don't really know what's going to happen with those, considering that they're still part of the Kurtzman era. We'll see how it goes, but considering that her experience is lesser than the others, I don't think it's quite as likely that she'll take over for Kurtzman, but it is a possibility. And next is going to be Mike McMahon, McMahon? Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying, right? He was the showrunner for all 5 seasons of Star Trek Lower Deck. Personally, I think he would be higher, but I don't think that the people over at Paramount are going to trust an animation guy to run the live-action division of Star Trek shows, even though that's kind of weird, but I understand that there's like an inside Hollywood running TV shows kind of deal that he needs to have knowledge of, and running an animation studio is different on that front. So I don't think it's quite as likely as I'd like him to be up there. And last is going to be the Hageman brothers, who worked on Star Trek Prodigy. That's pretty much the only Star Trek related project that they've worked on, and while Prodigy wasn't quite as well received in terms of like the numbers that the Paramount executives really wanted out of that show, so I don't see it as likely that they'll take over on that front. Plus, they seem to like animation a lot, and again, just like Mike, I don't think they're going to give an animation guy keys to the kingdom on their live action Star Trek stuff, even though I think that might be a good idea there. But my 3 outsiders, I'm going to go in descending order of like who I think is most likely. So least likely out of these 3 outsiders, I think David Goyer, who has worked on a lot of different things over the years, a major nerd franchise running guy, but he's most recently worked with Apple TV's Foundation series, which means I think he could try to take Star Trek in a new direction, or just do something generally new with it. Do I think he's the best choice on that? Not necessarily, but I do think Paramount executives would look at his career and be like, yeah, David Goyer would be a good choice on that front. I can definitely see that on there. Next on this list is going to be Seth MacFarlane. Seth is clearly a massive Star Trek fan. He's never made any he's never tried hiding it, basically. And he basically created his own version of Star Trek with the Orville. And I love the Orville. The Orville is great. The first few episodes are rough because they're trying to make it more of a comedy, but every episode they got closer and closer to Star Trek until it basically was Star Trek. And as much as like Seth is kind of a outspoken liberal type in Hollywood, and I don't know how he's going to feel about the Ellisons owning Paramount, I do think he's worked there long enough that if he was offered the chance to work on Star Trek directly, I think he would take that chance. I think he loves Star Trek enough that he feels like he needs to be the guy to shepherd it, and the guys at Paramount would absolutely love to have the creator of Family Guy and the Orville working on that, because he's such a high profile name on that front. So I can definitely see why they would go into it. And finally, the person I think is probably the best choice to work on Star Trek, period, out of everyone on this list, is going to be the guy who also has probably the most experience working on Star Trek, and that is Ronald D. Moore. Ronald D. Moore has never stopped making television. He went from Star Trek to Battlestar Galactica to Outlander to For All Mankind, and he's still working on For All Mankind in its first spin-off show, Star City, which is going to premiere this year. And I really do think that Ronald D. Moore, if he was offered, could come back for at least 1 to 2 seasons of a Star Trek show to just get it restarted, maybe put a couple shows in development, and that would make him bank, and he'd get to leave Star Trek on a great legacy. Not to say that he doesn't have an excellent legacy with Star Trek, but yeah, he's getting a little bit older, and this is the time period in which he could leave a big mark on the franchise if he wanted to, and I would absolutely trust him with it, and I think plenty of fans would too. But let me know, who do you think is the most likely person to take over for Alex Kurtzman, since it appears that he is leaving?